Good day, everyone. I'm Dr. Yogi Triprasatyo, an associate professor in School of Industrial Engineering and Engineering Management, Mapua University. I'm going to present my paper with title Occupational Fatality, Injury, Illness, and Work-Related Abuses of Indonesian Immigrant Workers in Taiwan 2013 to 2014. This is the agenda of my presentation. So, of course, starting with the introduction, methodology, resource and discussion, and finally the conclusions and contributions. Introductions. This is the main flow of migrant workers in the world, and basically in Asia. So for Indonesia, most of Indonesian workers, they go to the Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, Middle East, and of course in Hong Kong and Taiwan. The focus of my study is actually Indonesian workers in Taiwan. So this is actually my focus of my study. And then migrant workers count in Taiwan climbs to 706,000, and Indonesian is actually the largest group, followed by Vietnamese and Filipinos. So as we can see in here, Indonesia is actually has the highest number of the total foreign workers in Taiwan, compared with Vietnam, Philippines, or even Thailand. And in here we can see another pattern between Indonesian workers and also with the Vietnamese workers, because most of Vietnamese workers they work in industries compared if you compare with the social welfare. But for Indonesian workers, they work more in the social welfare more than industries. Okay, and this is actually one news that I got. There's actually one Indonesian worker in Kaohsiung has become a slave for 14 years. So this is it's kind of like a human trafficking case in here. And as we can see, the year in here from 2011 to 2014, the arrival actually like this is actually getting lower and lower and lower. But workers with the problems, it's actually in terms of the percentage, it's actually is getting lower, and then suddenly to in 2014 it's actually higher. So this is actually the thing that we need to do something about it. Okay, and there are three major sectors of Indonesian migrant workers in Taiwan: manufacturing, fisheries, or family nursing. But the focus of this study is actually only for the fisheries, only for the fisheries workers. But all the data is actually, I got it from Indonesian Economic and Trade Office to Taipei. I got the case of Indonesian workers who have the problem. So they will call the embassy, they will say their problem, and then the system will code his or her case in the system. And then from that system, actually, I selected the 50 cases for the fisheries. For manufacturing and family nursing, I will publish it in SDI. So the purpose of this study, fisheries worker is widely known as one of the most dangerous occupations. The purpose of this study is to analyze the pattern of 50 cases of Indonesian fishing immigrant workers in Taiwan from 2013 to 2014 using a cross-sectional study. This research contributes to the determination of important characteristics in the statistics, which may be used for prevention measures, especially for fisheries immigrant workers. For the methodology, so this is actually the system that I've mentioned before. We call it Simpati KDAE. So in here, it's actually very confidential. You cannot not everybody can get access to this system. It's only if we can get the permission from the embassy first before we get the system. So in here, based on this system, I collect the data, I I contribute the construct and contributing costs, outcome, and classification scheme. So that's actually my biggest contribution. And I will show the frequency distribution and cross tabulation and suggest recommendation. This is actually an example in the system. So in the system, you can see the number of the case, the number of the the name of the Indonesian worker, but of course I cannot show it in here, so it's censored in here. And then also the passport number and the status, whether it's legal or illegal. But I only choose the legal one. And they actually Indonesian Economic and Trade Office to Taipei already has their own classification scheme, but I would like to develop a new and a better classification scheme, and we can get the type of the work in here, but we only choose the fisheries as the focus of this study. Okay, and for the results and discussions. Oh, it's actually quite shocking that the highest number of frequency is actually from 50 cases. We have the 17 occupational fatalities in here. We have occupational injuries actually four cases. We have occupational illness 2 cases, and the rest is actually the work-related abuses such as excessive and undefined working hours, food and accommodation problem, and they were not provided food, non-payment, detention, or delay payment by the employer, physical abuse, non non-payment, detention, or delay payment by the agency, job mismatch with the contract, threat by agency, agency still find a job, non-payment of air ticket, psychological abuse, abuse by other workers, and non-occupational fatality, and so on. But this is the only one cause. But there are some of them. They're actually facing like 2 causes, 3 causes, or 4 causes. Some of them got like non-payment and occupational injury, detention ID with psychological abuse, physical abuse with the agency no help, overtime work with the and agency no help. 3 causes and 4 causes like physical abuse, psychological abuse, food problem, accommodation problem, and so on. So this is actually quite shocking. For occupational fatality, I've mentioned before there are 17 cases. So in order to see what happened with these 17 cases, I developed another subclassification. So based on these 17 causes, actually 3 cases is actually crossed by another vessel. One case is actually poison gas. One is actually died from jumping from the vessel during parking. One hit the sea coral. One hit by the heavy object, which is the fishing wire. One is actually dead because of the huge wave. However, there is the problem in here. The nine, the nine one in here, because the nine in here is actually not well documented. Because, for example, one dead while sleeping, one dead throw up unconscious and pass away. One was reported drowning. One was reported drowning during parking. One was reported due to an occupational injury, and one was reported fall in the sea. And 3 did not even mention in the report the detail of the case. Therefore, it is extremely important for Indonesian Economic and Trade Office to Taipei to describe each fatality in details, since it will be very beneficial for further monitor safety performance, causal factors, and also for the prevention measures. So I highlight this one is actually the government needs to to be there and then get the detail of the case and investigate the case to the police, to the coastal guard, and so on. And for the occupational fatality, we have 5 cases. And actually, 3 cases is actually stuck in the fishing wire. So one victim lose 4 right fingers, and the other 2 just mentioned a finger injury. And one is actually got the gas explosion. The victim got a burned skin and cannot walk. Therefore, it is extremely important to educate fisheries workers through intensive training prior to the employment period, because this training can reduce the chance for getting the occupational injury. And for the occupational illness, we have 2 cases. It's mentioned that one the worker has the left brain contaminated with the bacteria, and the other one has the intestine problem. Perhaps this is the poor food and accommodation problem that leads to these 2 cases. For the one who has the left brain contaminated with the bacteria. He received medical treatment, including surgery on his left brain, and it's also reported that he received 5,000 NT dollar for compensation. And for the worker who had the intestine problem, he already recovered and returned to work with a regular checkup once a week for the following 4 months. As I mentioned before, perhaps it's due to the poor food and accommodation problem. So again, the government agency and also the government of Taiwan needs to stand to be there to check the food and also the accommodation of the workers. This is the case outcomes. Actually, there are several cases, the death case, right? There are 18 death cases. It's actually 17 is the occupational fatality, but one is non-occupational fatality. But in here, I found out that there are cases not really detailed in the report, whether it's with compensation or without compensation. Because if there is a death case, there should be a compensation. So I have 11 cases death without compensation, and 8 cases employment transfer without compensation, 7 death with compensation, 7 stay at the same employer without compensation, and 6 quit the job without compensation, 3 run away, 2 quit the job with compensation, 2 stay at the same employer with compensation, 1 employment transfer with compensation, and 1 finish the contract and so on. So the conclusions and the contributions of the current study. Uh, for the occupational fatality, it's actually the most frequent case, which can be classified further into 6 different subclassifications. And for the occupational injury, stuck in the wire and gas explosions are 2 most frequent patterns. For occupational illness, brain with bacteria and intestines problem, we found these 2 cases. And for work-related abuses, we could classify that into 12 patterns. What's the contribution of the study? This is the highlighting some important issues of Indonesian fisheries workers in Taiwan, which require a constructive dialogue between Taiwan Fisheries Bureau, Taiwan Ministry of Labor, agencies of brokers, and Indonesian Economic and Trade Office to prevent future occupational injury, illness, fatality, and work-related abuses. That's all my presentation. Thank you, everyone.